So, let's say that you're a huge band. You just toured for your most successful album, really, for the past year, and you come home and fuck! You forgot to pay the rent. Evicted. Evicted from your residence. Sucks. It's exactly what happened to Alice in Chains. And they decided, in a very depressed state, that they were going to do what any good rock band does. They moved into the studio, London Bridge studio, and just decided to jam for a little while. And that's how Jar of Flies was born. Yeah, Jar of Flies was never, ever, ever supposed to be released. But the record label ended up loving the material so much that they opted to release it as an EP in January of 1994. And what happened? It only became the first EP in the history of the Billboard Top 200 charts, to ever debut at number 1. Yeah, so, all good things come to those who wait, I suppose. Either that or every great tragedy is usually supplemented by a grand success. Jar of Flies. Easily one of the most impressive EPs that I've ever heard in my history. One of my favorite EPs and one of my favorite Alice in Chains releases in history. And one that certainly has all of these distinctions for various reasons. It's one that certainly gained its popularity based around the success and strength of not only the band, but also of some key singles that came out, such as I Stay Away, such as No Excuses. Oddly enough, two of my favorite songs on the album, really two of my favorite songs in Alice in Chains history, were not released as singles off of this, and really, one of them in particular definitely became a defining moment for the band, a defining song. So let's talk about this a little bit. What are those two songs, firstly, that you might be wondering? That would be the first two tracks on Jar of Flies, Rotten Apple and, of course, Nutshell. Rotten Apple is this menacing, nearly 7-minute long track, very down, very chilled out, something that really showcases what this session was going to be all about. It wasn't about being very loud. It wasn't about being, exceptionally over the top. This was instead something that was just kind of stripped down a little bit, something that was really going to bring more of a focus to the acoustic guitar. It was going to really showcase and illuminate the vocal abilities of both Jerry and Lane, and it was going to be more potently, it was going to come across more potently as just kind of relaxing pieces of good, solid music. If you think about what Lane Staley did in the future, if you really had that type of future sense, if you think about what he did with Mad Season, if you think where this was something that was definitely very blues-driven, it's something that definitely started with Jar of Flies, because there's definitely a bluesy feel to this. It's a darker version. It's one that certainly has a very brooding and loathing sound to it, but it's present. Nutshell would quickly establish itself as one of the most important songs in Alice in Chains' catalog. It was the song that started off, once again, with the future sense. They're highly successful and what I consider to be the greatest unplugged album of all time. And this is one that certainly you just saw and heard the appreciation for this band, the love of this band, and the love of this song, especially the love of Elaine Staley and Jerry Cantrell, based around the audience's reaction as the individuals from the band start to take the stage as the song begins. But in its purest form, in its studio form, it is no slouch either. In fact, this was the first version of the song that I heard, and still remains to be one of my favorites, even though the live version is certainly no slouch in that department also. Now, the two singles that both experienced and enjoyed long-term success on the radio airwaves, which definitely gave Jar of Flies as an EP a lot of promotion. This is something that's very unlike an EP. Whenever you think about an extended play, especially one that was not only number 1, but has enjoyed triple platinum sales, there definitely has to be a reason behind that. Not all 3 million people are buying this album all at once. If that were to happen, that would be ridiculous. I imagine that it would be just absolute pandemonium, considering I have seen what one store is like on a week in which an artist just hits close to 1 million. And that's certainly a busy, busy week. If all 3 million came in, you would literally have people in line out the door. But both of these songs enjoyed long stays and are still songs that you consider to be, mainstays in the Alice in Chains radio rotation list, with No Excuses and I Stay Away in that regard. Both of these are very good tracks, I will say, and both are ones that definitely continue the album onward in a very nice fashion. However, whenever you're following up two songs that I really feel are some of the strongest material and most different material from Alice in Chains prior to the Tripod album, then damn. Man, that's really, really hard to follow up. And they did their best, but it's difficult to do. Another curious idea was Whale and Wasp. This was largely instrumental and one that included strings. This was definitely ambitious, and it was one that certainly probably took a lot of people off guard. This was eventually released as a promo-only single. It's crazy to think of all of the different risks and leaps that this band decided to take with Jar of Flies, in the way in which it was promoted. They literally handled this album, this EP should I say, as though it were an album. I switched those up. There were 4 total singles from this. Don't Follow was another one, and Don't Follow I don't consider to be that strong of a song. However, it's still pretty damn good. But those are the 4 tracks. They didn't even think about Nutshell or Rotten Apple, but yet right now, if you mention the song Nutshell to an Alice in Chains fan, they're going to know what you're talking about just like that. Unless, of course, they're just, one of the loafers that just knows Man in the Box and the others. This EP definitely showed that Alice in Chains was a band that had the capability to really transform themselves and morph themselves into something more. They had more of a universal idea of music. They had more of a transitional idea of music. And Jar of Flies, for being a bunch of songs that they just decided to jam, after being evicted, to become one of the most successful, actually the most successful EP, in my opinion, in history. It may not be true as far as sales standards and all that other riff-raff, but if you're the first one ever to be number 1 on the Billboard Top 200s, and you did that in the 90s, whenever downloading was not a thing, it's pretty damn impressive. In fact, there's only one album that's done that, one EP, should I say, that has done that ever since. And that was Linkin Park and Jay-Z's Collision Course. And, well, Linkin Park probably could have done it on their own. Jay-Z could have probably done it on his own. Put the two together, and you're almost guaranteed that that was going to happen. This transitional EP definitely spotlighted the fact that their next release by Alice in Chains was going to be one that was going to have a lot of acclaim backing it prior to it even being released. This was one that was going to have so much hype behind it, so much excitement. The band right now is as hot as it ever could be. What would we get from this band next? What are we going to get? Is an album that certainly is the most curious of their collection. Certainly one that does have its moments, but certainly one that's going to involve a lot more dissection than perhaps, your everyday run-of-the-mill facelift or dirt. So, next time, we'll talk about Alice in Chains' album that needed no title, just merely the name of the band and a strange dog on the cover. I'll talk to you then.